Story. My grandfather built Martin Luther King Jr. his first car.
What?
No shit. What kind of car was it?
You okay, Tom?
Tom's a little tipsy.
I feel like you're a little tipsy, Tom. Yes, sir.
Yes. Okay. Drinking with Tom.
Drinking with me is today's episode. Another drop of gin.
Welcome, everybody.
What's up? We're
having cider. We're having hard cider today because I just switched to the primal diet.
Not paleo.
Not paleo.
Don't get confused,
so
Tom.
there is a difference, and we're going to talk a little bit about that.
Paleo.
How are you feeling?
I feel good. Like right now, I feel a little This is 8% alcohol, which is...
I've never had cider before. This is surprisingly good. It's like fruit punch for grown-ups.
Yeah.
It
has a good taste. More like a hard seltzer.
It's
like a truly like.
It actually doesn't even taste like cider at all. It just
it tastes like a seltzer,
like a hard tropical.
See, these are the dangerous beverages because they taste so good. You can't taste alcohol in them, and you can have a bunch and be shit-faced.
I realize I can't fucking walk. Let alone drive, which you shouldn't do, obviously, for drinking.
Don't drink and drive.
But
just don't drink at all.
What are you doing?
Yeah, what are you doing?
No. Drink.
Throw it out.
Drink.
This away.
But don't drive. You'll save on gas.
Be responsible.
Yeah, don't drink and drive because you'll save on gas.
Beer's cheaper than gas nowadays.
Yeah, and
it's much cheaper than gas.
Okay, since I have a question that's been in my mind. So if gas went up, does Uber prices go up?
Everything goes up.
It should be.
Like Uber prices compensate to like the.
Well,
price
it's
of the gas,
regional,
right?
I think, because.
Think about it this way: the petrodollar is basically what the dollar is based on. So if oil goes up, which is basically why gas is going up, then everything goes up.
Okay.
So all modes of transportation, your food, so everything that's transported, like food and goods,
uses petrol.
Go up, yeah, because everything is based on petrodollars and of course the consumption of fossil fuels. So everything, your electricity, I mean everything's
Oh yeah, no, and it definitely goes up because
that's why we need Elon Musk to be the president of the world.
He really does. At least the president of the United States, but can he be? Because he's South African.
No, he can't. No, he can't.
So president of the world for sure.
Yeah,
that would be awesome. I mean, I would definitely trust him.
Yeah.
Would you though?
I would.
I don't know. He's smart and all, but he can be a little shady sometimes.
I don't trust human beings in general, but I mean, I would trust him more than most other people that have occupied that any political station or any mode of political office. I would trust him more.
Yeah.
Because he's like self-made. He's kind of real, and I mean, he's innovative and
he's smart.
He's very intelligent.
He's really smart.
Like the dude would get shit done.
Yeah. Okay. So we wanted to call this a drop of gin.
Another drop of
gin.
In reference to Pink Floyd.
Tell us a little bit about
psychedelics influenced music.
Yeah.
I know we've talked about psychedelics a lot. So
that's what we do.
Psychedelics are amazing.
That they've influenced the counterculture of the 1960s. And of course the music scene back then. I mean, things started to change in music back then. Prior to that, obviously music was something, if you think about it, music was something you danced to, like in the 40s and 50s, right? Then music became something you listened to.
So it was meant for dancing, not for
music. Well, music has always been for dancing.
For dancing, right.
It's like the purpose was to dance to it, not to listen to it.
But after psychedelics influenced the culture, and in particular music, and in other areas of the culture, music became something you listened to.
Oh.
Because the words then, you derive meaning from the words, because the lyrics had more substance. There was
something to listen to.
Meaning attributed to the lyrics because the psychedelics were, I guess, influencing the artist's perception so much that they were actually composing songs that were also, interesting to listen to. And I don't know if you could dance. Maybe you could dance to them. Maybe you couldn't. they were definitely different, but the lyrics were something that you could derive meaning from, and so the music, and in particular, Beatles were really the first group to do that, and they started experimenting with drugs. And Sgt. Pepper was the first album in 1967 or 66. I'm sorry, that album came out, and it was like people have never heard anything like that.
Yeah,
it was a concept, the first concept album, and it was music that people listened to for the first time. Like you were really listening to what they were saying
because of the lyrics,
because there were messages,
and it became exactly. So people were trying to get their points across too. Because I know for a while Pink Floyd got pretty political.
Floyd, of course, was definitely among them. They were contemporaries of the Beatles, being also from the UK.
Yeah, and
then of course, political messaging crept into the lyrics as well.
Kind of that kind of touches back to our topic from last time, like cartoons, how they would like encrypt those little things
right
into like cartoons. So they started doing that with music.
Yeah, because it was a bit more. Because it was even film. Yeah. Most things were for sheer entertainment, or even if it wasn't, it was just there wasn't much messaging.
But some of these rock bands were complete anarchists with their messages.
Of course.
Yeah, they were not encrypting anything. They were,
if not anarchists,
flat out
messaging. They were trying to get a point across to their audience.
Right.
And in particular, whether it was just to get them to think more, to feel more, or maybe to act, to be more to be an activist.
Right. How do you think music has evolved to present day now with those kind of messages?
It's interesting because it's how much more can we do? Like at this point, I think like music went through this period in the 80s where it went back to kind of like dance music,
like party music.
Without any substance.
Yeah, with like it had no meaning, and nowadays.
And now we're kind of cycling back into the.
Most of the music nowadays, like 2021, 2022 music, really has no meaning. Like a lot. I'm not saying all of it. I'm saying a few of
most of it. At least what's in the radio, or
exactly what's in the radio. Trending. It's more like if you write down the lyrics and listen, like read them instead than like listening to them, just like reading the lyrics, you're gonna be like, dude, this makes no sense. It's like a 5-year-old wrote this because it makes no sense. Yeah, they're just trying to find words that rhyme with
and
each
it's
other.
Like this much of lyrics, and
like
it just keeps circling and circling.
It's all about the music.
It's all about the production.
You go back to like what's this guy like Frank Sinatra. Frank Sinatra. You read one of his lyrics and it's a story. It's a poem. Yeah. It's not like you can see it as a song when you listen to it, or you can read it as a poem. A lot
of those tunes were like love songs, right? And so there was songs written about love.
And it makes sense. And
nowadays, but Sinatra was pre-rock, right?
Of course, yeah. He was big band era. And so they wrote a lot. The lyrics were more about love, which is fine. That's great. But it wasn't until the 60s that it started to become a little more abstract and experimental, and the lyrics were representative of the zeitgeist, the cultural influences of the time.
And what I mean is that like they actually had a purpose, like their songs.
Yeah, there was
like you read about it, and it was a little.
They wanted you to think, or maybe even to get you to react to something that was completely crazy.
It was like a little story, like what they would tell you. Yeah, it was like a little story of like someone that lost a loved one, and
really it
was a little story of how they met someone or something.
In a sense, because opera did tell a story, because there were no movies, and theater
was opera.
There was theater, but musical theater was opera, and so they were telling stories.
Yeah.
But then it evolved. That was centuries ago.
And now it's like
rock and roll sort of took that on. With the psychedelics inspired the rock and roll. In a sense, reinvent opera. In a sense.
Yeah.
In a sense, by telling stories that had meaning.
Or they just put a bunch of sounds together. We were just listening to that one song.
They were being...
What was it called?
Several species of small furry animals gathered together in a cave and grooving with a pick.
I can't believe that's a title.
That Pink Floyd song has a much more descriptive title than the actual lyrics.
Like nobody would...
You think we'll get copyright if we put that? Because, I mean, it's just a bunch of furry animal noises.
It is, yeah. Well,
we will get copyright, but look it up. Look it up.
Look it up.
It's trippy.
It's completely trippy and wild, and it's like experimental and definitely psychedelically influenced, I think.
Yeah.
And just that was that era, you know, and Floyd back then in particular, but prior to even some of the more meaningful compositions that they created in the later 60s and 70s that we're more familiar with, were into this very, like, it was highly experimental stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
For everyone listening on YouTube, let us know in the comments what you think of modern music compared to
like
music and
or the different eras.
Yeah, the different eras.
Go through like the decades, or how would you rate?
Which one's your favorite?
Yeah, like 60s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s.
Or nowadays, yeah.
Or now we're into the 2010s, and we're into the 2020s now. So.
Yeah, 2020s.
So every 10 years, every decade, you have a generational shift.
Yeah.
Yeah. Big.
Or a zeitgeist, you know, that sort of consumes the population. And so...
Yeah, definitely.
I think now, like more than ever, is... because we have access to so much information, we have, I don't know, you would call it like, it's world music.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Definitely.
Exactly.
There's a mixing of genres. And again, in the 60s, that was another thing they did, which was kind of cool. There's a really cool song called This Old Cowboy from Marshall Tucker. And it's full of cowboy angst, so it's more or less country music. But if you listen to the song, there's flute, there's violin or fiddle, there's electric guitar. And so it's almost like and the drum beat's almost jazz-like. So it's like a mixing of genres, and it's something that they did back then. They weren't afraid to mix genres. So like rock and roll, country, and jazz.
Right.
They weren't afraid to do that. They now it's all... Well, they went through a period where you were either country, you were jazz, or you were rock and roll, or you were dance.
Yeah, like you had a need, like...
But this song's interesting if you listen to it. I mean, full of cowboy angst, but the music is just this blend of genres that I have not necessarily heard. Certainly nowadays, I think people are a little more experimental again, which is
funny. Because we have this big library of we have this big library of music.
But I love that we were able to do that, and without fear of, I guess, fear of being canceled, which is a trendy term these days. I know there was a period like in the 70s and 80s, like you were either one or the other. You couldn't be both. And you certainly wouldn't mix genres, but they did that. And so I kind of see we're getting back to that, in a sense, that we're mixing things, not afraid to mix genres, even in film.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And I think it's a much more diverse palette that we're working with these days, which is good. I mean, I think access to information is the reason why, because there's still a cancel culture out there, but an insecure, media that sort of wants to retain its identity. But in the midst of that, there's just the world's doing its own thing.
It's
mixing and matching, and that's good.
Yeah.
You don't have to be a specific, like, you don't have to listen to something specifically. Like, if you like it, mixing around might work.
And it's true, because before the internet, you had to be like very knowledgeable person.
You had to be knowledgeable, well-researched, and
traveled the world and has experienced other cultures. That, like people that would know what it's like to experience the Asian culture, the Indian culture. Well, I guess they're both Asian, but the Hispanic culture, you would have to travel to those places. Nowadays, you just have to Google shit. And
truly, yeah.
Or just go on Facebook and see what's going on.
I mean, people were like post World War II in the 50s and 60s, people were traveling more. We had a boom, an economic boom.
Right.
The baby boomers, and as they became young adults, they did start to travel, and they sort of launched this counterculture and this creative revolution, which we're enjoying the benefits of.
Yeah.
Today, the technological.
Shout out to the baby boomers.
And like people like Steve Jobs, right? All those people in the 70s who were coming into their own because they were a little more worldly than their parents. And that had to do with the fact that we were just economically more stable.
Right.
And they were able to travel and experiment. And of course the psychedelic component as well.
Okay, so where did this song come from? The Drop of Gin.
Oh, Pink Floyd.
Pink Floyd, yeah. But
it's not called Another Drop of Gin. It's a Corporal Clack.
Or what did you guys say about the Drop of Gin?
Well, it's in the lyric.
It's part of the lyrics. Okay. Yeah. So they were inspired through psychedelics for writing that song?
Again, I don't know about that song in particular, but
most.
It's a trippy, sad song inspired on a
very
corporal.
Sad,
it's a folk tale. Again, they're telling a story about
that you're meant to listen
corporal that lost a leg in war.
That's where the wooden leg comes from.
And had post-traumatic stress disorder. Wanted metal, but in vain, and became an alcoholic. And had post-traumatic stress disorder.
And they're actually talking to his wife, saying that she should be proud of him.
Yeah.
It's a
cautionary tale.
Yeah, and it's directed more towards his wife.
It's an anti-war song, really, because this is also written during the height of the Vietnam War.
Okay.
And again, another message.
Yeah, so I think again the messaging in that era, which wasn't something you saw in previous eras.
Yeah.
Was again something that caused the audience to stop and give pause to what are they saying? Wow, this is music to be listened to as opposed to be something you just dance to or you hear. You actually listen and learn.
Yeah, it's something that you.
And you couldn't read the lyrics back then. You couldn't Google the lyrics.
Well, they had liner notes back then on the albums. They would have all the lyrics. They called them liner notes. So, some cases they were little pamphlets that came inside the album cover.
Right.
Or on the jacket, there was a sleeve that the record fitted.
Yeah, yeah.
And they would oftentimes have.
But sometimes you would get that second hand, and you wouldn't get.
Often, or if you had a good ear.
They wouldn't have that, so you would have to listen to it multiple times.
Yeah.
And write them down yourself.
Write them down, yeah. If there were no liner notes.
That's so cool, nowadays that you can just Google lyrics and...
No, Spotify gives them to you.
Yeah.
And it's so easy. You can Google lyrics for a song.
You can listen to the song and then Spotify brings it up for you. And
or on YouTube sometimes as the song's
karaoke.
going, there's a closed caption.
Yeah.
Again, just benefit of a modern age.
And I think the hardest thing was... in the early 90s, mid 90s, even late 90s, that you'd had to have a blank tape ready to go to record your favorite song right at the precise moment it was playing on the radio.
And then the radio guy would
create a mixtape.
Yeah, you had to really it was luck of
that was a talent too.
I remember those days back in the 70s,
you just had to pray to God that
you had your tape in the cassette player.
That the radio guy didn't interrupt in the middle of the song.
They would always tell you what was coming up back then. I remember, we have tracks coming up. These are the tracks that are coming. 5 tracks, and they would tell you what's coming. So you were waiting, and I think they knew people were recording it, so they would tell you. We got Led Zeppelin and Stairway to Heaven coming up.
Yeah, and they were incentivizing piracy in such a way. That's when piracy was so young.
And it's people could also, buy the album and record it onto a cassette tape.
Yeah.
That was not that difficult to do.
Yeah.
In the 70s.
See, in my time growing up, we'd use something called LimeWire. And we'd download the song we'd download multiple songs and then burn them onto a CD.
Yeah, I remember that too. Like,
I remember
they had them in
LimeWire.
record stores too.
Yeah. If you really wanted to create a CD, you needed to have at least 8 good songs to fit in there.
Mm-hmm.
And then a new song comes out.
You gotta make a whole new
And then
CD.
you have to make a whole new CD with the same previous songs, and then you fit that new one. And I remember I had like 5 different CDs with the same songs, except with the last 2 or 3 that were new
like
songs.
every single one, it was just
and you know, you had to really. It was like a coin toss. Like, you'd have to really see what file you're gonna download, or else you'll have like this freaking virus. I remember I destroyed the home PC. We had a home computer, like the family computer. I destroyed it for downloading a freaking song that was a Trojan virus.
Yeah, that's
horrible.
Well, this is all. Prior to any of that, I remember you could go to
Frostwire.
CDs came out. Then
Frostwire too.
Burnable CDs, but the first one was Napster.
I remember Napster.
Because I remember that it was the late 90s. And it was free, and there wasn't any laws around it yet because it was so new.
Yeah, and piracy wasn't such a big thing that people were losing money.
Because it was assumed you could actually you could burn a CD from an album or a cassette.
Yeah.
Or whatever, you know. Because that was just doable, and nobody gave a shit as long as you weren't selling it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you weren't making like money out of it.
And we would do that. You'd make a best of compilation of all your vinyl or whatever you had, or even other CDs, because you go CD to CD.
Yeah, I remember I would use Microsoft.
You could even store them on your computer and then download them onto a CD.
Were you able to wipe a CD?
No.
Well, yes, they had 2 different CDRs and CDRW.
CDRW.
This is why we love Tom. He knows everything.
Yeah, well, I've lived through this era. So CDR was the one where you burn it once and that's it.
Okay.
And it had better quality, so that's the one you wanted to use if you wanted the best quality. But the RWs were writable, or it was rewritable. Basically, the RW was recordable and wipeable, or whatever it was called, or whatever their acronyms were. So you could erase it and then re-record over.
Right.
So you could format it.
So it was like a USB but in a CD.
Yes. So they had an RW, but the quality wasn't as good, so they weren't quite as
until like the early 2000s. So then the MP3 CD came.
Well, that was the thing, and I remember when that era came out. I remember at the time working at some like Circuit City.
Yeah.
You worked at Circuit City?
Oh, years ago.
We want to hear that.
It was only for like a summer. Oh. And I remember the guy, one of the dudes, the techie guys, was really smart. And this guy's like, here's the best laptop to buy, here's the best PC. And he knew everything about fucking computers. This guy was really cool. You know, he said, this is the best CPU, and this is why.
So you work with Bill Gates?
With somebody like that. This is the difference between an AMD and an Intel, and bus speed, and this is what bus speed means. And he said, listen to me, this is what's coming. He said, solid state is going to take over the industry. It's a couple years away, and the reason being is that there are no moving parts. Up to that point, everything had a moving part.
Right.
Like even CDs, it was basically a turntable.
The CD-ROM.
It was no different than your record player. It was just reading it differently, but
it was smaller.
It had to spin. Even a fucking hard drive spins.
I had a Walkman.
The floppy disk spinned, right?
And
like the ones that they had a little disc inside.
Well, I had a Walkman, a CD player Walkman, and that thing was spinning.
They would overheat.
The Walkman was a cassette. The Discman was.
And if you drop it, you're screwed.
Yeah.
So your little lens would die.
It's taken over. You can store more. Plus, it's digitized, and there are no moving parts, so it won't wear out. And
so cool.
And then, 2 years later, the first iPod.
Right. I remember those.
Remember those commercials with U2?
Those are so rare.
Yeah.
The one with the commercial with the shadows. It's the silhouettes of people dancing.
Yeah, and then they have the white headphones.
What a
I have
right.
one.
So solid state took over, and even my father said that because he was an engineer. He's like, solid state's the way to go. No moving parts, and that's silicon. It's just stored in the crystal in the silicon.
I remember I had an
everything now is solid state.
I remember I had an MP3 player that would take one AAA battery, and it was 1 gigabyte.
The red one.
Yes, and it would only fit like 10 songs.
Yeah.
But it was like a little USB.
But it was enough.
The little ones. My first was a SanDisk.
Oh yeah,
there were SanDisk.
Yeah, I remember
that.
That
was my first.
That was my second one.
I could store I think it was like 50 songs. I never really had a big playlist, so I had like 30, 40 songs. It was heavy.
And then
it was like 1 gig.
And then the Walkman MP3 player came to life. I remember having one of those. I got that one for my 14th birthday. Yeah. That thing was nice. But my ultimate favorite was the competition to the iPod. I don't know if you remember the Zoom. It's Zune.
Something like that.
It was a Microsoft one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the SanDisk, I thought
it was like a big brick, but it had a nice LED screen, and it was colored, and it was like, I guess it was like 20 gigabytes, I guess.
It was a light screen, not like the ones that you need to look at.
It was like a iPod, but it was revolutionary because it had like 20 gigabytes or something. Like you could fit a bunch of songs in there, and I mean, that was my favorite thing. It was so heavy, it was so big, so bulky, and
Zoom. Yeah. I need to look that up.
Look at us now using AirPods and wireless headphones.
I think it was Jobs that had the idea. Of course, he created the iPod, but then thought, why don't we put it on the telephone?
The first iPhone was invented in what, like 2008?
2006.
Oh, yeah, no, it was. I remember I was in 8th grade.
We traded one for a bike, dude.
Yes, we did. It was cracked. It was
a
cracked
screen. I'm just going to put it all on the phone, and then you could also watch digital media, so like movies. Because I remember, like, a friend of mine had like
MP4 files.
Fucking phone. I'm like,
yeah.
Really? That's pretty wild. Like you could he had the movie Jaws on his phone.
I had Alvin and the Chipmunks.
And then this other one, the B movie.
The B movie, yes. I have that one too.
And it just all basically merged into one technology, which made sense.
It's so nostalgic.
Tokyo Drift.
Going back to that.
Yeah, Tokyo Drift. Oh my god.
I remember that year though when I worked there I remember we all sat around on break downloading songs on Napster. From Napster to CDs and burning CDs right there.
Were those safe files though? Because I feel like Napster was like a big company.
There wasn't really much in the way viruses then in the late 90s.
I mean, they couldn't do much.
Because they were pretty heavy files accounts,
too,
right? Like, because they couldn't really compress them as they can today.
I don't remember how big they were, to be honest with you, but we were able to get them onto CDs, and then you'd have all this music. I'm like, oh fuck, this is great. And there were a bunch of knockoffs, and there still are, like peer-to-peer things, like Pirates Bay and shit like that.
Yeah. Is that still a thing, Pirates Bay?
Oh yeah, you can get music and movies and all kinds of shit.
Wow.
I mean, who does that though?
I mean, it's harder. I mean, there's more security around. Obviously,
you're gonna get swatted, man.
Surveillance, you'd get swatted. You'd have to use.
I mean, it's so much easier to just like download Spotify.
Yeah. But yeah, everything's like who needs to download music? Because you can
go on Google.
Get a YouTube. I have a YouTube subscription, like YouTube Music.
YouTube, yeah.
And I can just play whatever I want whenever I want it for free. I mean, it's
YouTube Premium or whatever.
Right.
It's only less than $10 a month.
Yeah.
And I can play whatever I want whenever I want it.
Yeah, that's true.
It's pointless to download music illegally.
And we're like nowadays
you can get a virus and destroy your
PC.
You'll
get a virus.
It was harder because it was a big process. You needed to download the music, connect your phone, pass it on over to your phone, and then like store it in your phone. And nowadays, like wherever you go, you just pop up Spotify. Someone tells
Spotify,
you let's say you tell me about a song, I go on Spotify, boom, hit it, add it to my playlist, I'm good.
And there it is.
Like I don't have to go download it, go home, connect my phone to the computer and then just
something like that is obviously it's so outdated now. Like this idea of downloading.
Yeah, I remember. We used to have,
and subscriptions are cheap too to a lot of these things, even like Hulu for movies. And
$5.99.
It's so cheap.
Yeah, I remember one of my phones ran under Java. It's called Java.
Yeah, Java.
It ran over Java, under Java software, and kids in school would have games in their phones, so we would send each other games through Bluetooth.
It's called jailbreaking, right?
No, we wouldn't jailbreak it yet. No. That's a whole different thing. That's that's another stage of my life when I was jailbreaking everything. But we got to a point where
what they call crack codes and stuff.
Yeah, well, you pretty much what you do is you overwrite credentials of a device, so you can do whatever the hell you want with it. Yeah. You can manipulate the software. Now that I think about it, I was programming at 15 because I would jailbreak phones and.
There was always one kid at school that would charge $50 to jailbreak either your portable PlayStation, the PlayStation Portable that was a beauty.
Oh yeah,
early 2010s, 2008, 2009. You'd have to buy the games, the little CDs, and they're expensive, and then you have to carry your full case with all the games. So there was always one kid that would jailbreak the whole system, and he would put this software where you can actually play Nintendo games and Xbox games. I remember playing Halo and Gears of War from Xbox on my PSP, and also playing Mario games.
Yeah,
it was so really cool.
Because you were able to jailbreak the system, the software, like I said, you override it. So pretty much any other console game that you can you can download it. If it was on a PC and the file, you would import it into your PSP, and your PSP.
They were called emulators.
Emulators. Right,
yeah,
it would run the damn
software. Yeah.
It would run the game. It was pretty cool.
On the OS.
Yeah. Oh man, good times. Good times.
Nowadays,
now everything is
so
jailbreak proof.
I'm sure. Of course, that makes sense because eventually it catches up.
But then again, nobody wants to do that anymore because all they do is online gaming.
Right.
Honestly, how many people sit in line? In the early 2010s and late, around that time, how they would have release nights for a video game and they'd make these big lines outside of GameStop. How many people do actually go to the release of a video game so they can actually play the video game? They don't. You could just download it on your console. But you don't even play the story mode. You go straight into the online because that's what you do now. Call of Duty. Shouldn't even bother making a game anymore. They should just keep upgrading their
Warzone,
their Warzone game or their online version of it.
So they're basically, I think they learned,
which I think they stopped doing.
People are going to basically pirate, and then they have to counter that. So I think what they learned to do is, let's create equity, right? Let's make it accessible to everyone for a reasonable price.
It's free.
Everybody can afford, and then we can make money on the volume.
Warzone is free.
They're not losing money on the piracy.
And it's crazy. It's crazy because
everything is so accessible.
Video games are for the PS3, they were around $60. Video games for the PS5, I imagine they're around $90 or so.
Are they really?
Yeah, but people don't. I might be wrong, but I think that's what I saw them at Walmart. So, buying a video game now, it doesn't incentivize people to go buy the CD or the disc, the Blu-ray version of it.
That's what makes it expensive.
But give them a free version, such as Warzone or Fortnite. Fortnite became a big thing. It's free to download. You can play cross platforms. And when you give them something for free, it kind of it's like a mental thing. You need to spend money in the game. So you buy all these skins, you buy all these...
Smart.
And you end up paying more than...
And then you end up paying more because...
I noticed that with Madden.
I mean, probably not You won't.
FIFA,
You probably won't
with
spend that like right from the get go, but you will spend it like it's a continue. Yeah, because you continue to spend as the game upgrades.
They're not having to put the money out to burn a disc and package it, and ship it to a retailer. So it's downloadable, and they're going to make that plus much more over time, and I think that's why.
Yeah, and they're geniuses because they developed the system.
And that's cool.
They developed the system that used to be okay. You pay $60 up front for the game, but that's all you're buying. That's all you're spending money on.
Correct.
Or we give you a free version, and you'll probably. And I know there's people out there that've spent over $1,000 over time. And somehow that makes sense because people save up.
It's online.
People will save up to buy the disc.
Put nothing into the well, other than marketing, they didn't have to actually burn a disc and buy.
Which is genius.
And it's less waste.
I was listening.
Talk about it's ecologically more efficient.
Well, I don't even think people worry about
less plastic and shit they have to. Creates less waste.
Well,
less petroleum.
That's from.
They don't have to ship it, so there's less fuel being consumed.
But that's the creators. That's from the creator's point of view. I'm saying from the consumer. The consumer doesn't have to think twice to spend $50 on a game,
like limited edition,
but will not hesitate to spend $10 one week, $10 another week, $10 another week, just buying the skins.
I mean, whatever.
When you least expect it, you've already spent over $100 in the course of
in a
5
way,
months.
It's better for the consumer too, because if you think about it, you're not having to buy a new game every year.
That's true.
In 2 years, you're spending $120 on, like, say, if you're into Madden or FIFA. That's what, like a $50 purchase, right?
Right.
Yeah, it's around
And if you get the deluxe edition, it's like $60. So, like, in 2 years, you're at $120. But if you're doing an online version, it might take you more than that.
Yeah.
Or if you do spend $120 in 2 years, you're going to get more.
Yeah.
And it's no skin off the backs of the developers because they're not having to invest in trucks to ship their product to the retailers or have to press a CD and waste plastic. Right, it's all online. It's digital, solid state, right?
Yeah,
and it's not a moving part like the fucking disc, right?
Right,
solid state, and so it's way better for everybody.
Yeah, I was listening to this podcast from these two guys named Zane and Heath, and Zane, the guy named Zane, he's a big Candy Crush guy. Like he plays Candy Crush.
That's still a game.
It's still a game.
I know what the hell is Candy Crush.
So Candy Crush is it's a game on your phone. I have no idea how to play it. I've just heard about it. I've seen it, and he has spent over $4,000 in the span of like him using the game.
How many years?
I don't know, but that's a lot of money for a game.
It is
like $4,000 for like he buys lives, buys like
upgrades, this is where
and stuff like that. It's crazy. And I was.
But if you're like a professional gamer,
I was looking. I don't think. I guess. No, it's
watch
not
a stream of Candy Crush.
No, Candy Crush is like a. It's a little game. Like
it's a mobile app.
You can't even play competitive on the game. It's just you and the.
It's like an arcade game.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't know. It's. I guess everyone says it's really addicting. I've never tried it, and it just gives me a headache.
It is. No, it is.
You spent like over $4,000, and the thing is that I was watching the revenue of the game, and it's around like $1.5 billion.
Wow.
A year?
No, I don't know if a year or like since they started, but it's a freaking mobile game.
I imagine a year.
That's insane.
It's a great time waster.
That's insane amount of money.
This is the dark side of all that too, is that it does encourage impulsive behavior and all that.
Yeah.
That's a whole other conversation. I mean, that's obviously up to the individual to police themselves. I see, though, basically, in a general sense, it's kind of a win-win for the developer and the consumer. If you're responsible, it's like gambling, I guess. If you're responsible, you can. Wow, that's fucking balance. That's pretty cool.
Didn't you see? I've had it like that for a while.
Moderate and manage your.
No, yours is empty. needs to have a little bit in it. Just
like, it has to have a little bit in it.
You need to have the perfect amount for it.
That is freaking cool, dude. This is the highlight of our podcast.
That's gonna be our thumbnail. All of us just looking at a can.
This is Diego performing magic. No.
Stop.
Let's do the full 360.
There's a lot of editing that's gonna have to go. You suck. See, that's why we don't try stuff on camera, because we have kids working.
This is why.
I'm sorry, Tom.
This is why God created washing machines.
That is very true.
Excuse me. Created washing machines.
God didn't create washing machines. We created washing machines. God created
man. And man created washing machines.
That's true. You know, okay, this is some like off-topic, horrible thing that I'm about to say. But there's this guy on TikTok that he can loop himself into anyone. Like, he can I don't know. Like,
he can connect himself.
He can connect himself to anyone in the world.
I've seen that guy.
Isn't it insane?
That is insane.
I spent like an hour looking at like all his videos yesterday.
All his TikToks.
Is like he has a picture of him and some person. That person has a picture with this and this person.
Is this like 6 degrees of separation?
Something like that. So there's this kid on TikTok, and his thing is, I can connect myself to anyone in the world in less than, I don't know if he says in less.
No, he doesn't say less than anything.
There's people that challenge him, and they tell him, hey, can you connect me
with you or something like that?
Can you connect me with you or with... I bet you can't do me with such and such.
No, yeah.
In less than 7 attempts. Or like 7 pictures. And he will pull up a picture of... He will go on his social media, stalk that social media, and he will literally say, okay, well, here's a picture of Donald Trump with Snoop Dogg. And then there's a picture of Snoop Dogg with John F. Kennedy. Random example. And then there's a picture of John F. Kennedy with like Marilyn Monroe. And then Marilyn Monroe with you.
Yeah.
He connected someone.
I can connect myself to some pretty famous people.
Can you?
I know you.
So Martin Luther King Jr.
Okay.
3 degrees of separation.
Okay.
True story. My grandfather built Martin Luther King Jr. his first car.
What?
No shit. What kind of car was it?
The hell?
I don't know what kind of car it was exactly, but it was a stick shift.
Okay.
When he was a young man, he studied in Philadelphia at Crozier Theological Seminary. I think it was a college outside of Philly, and it was for theologians. And that's where Martin Luther King Jr. went to school. And he was a young man. He was probably only about 18 years old. And my father and my uncle were young. They were young. They were probably, right around 10 years old or a little younger. And my grandfather was a master mechanic. And so he could build cars. He used to build cars just for the fuck of it. He loved doing that.
Dude.
And he bartered with a guy named Big John, who was African American, and his son. They were plumbers, and they would trade plumbing for like automotive work.
Was it Lil Jon's dad?
I know Big John. Big John was the plumber, and his son was his helper. Like they had a business, and they were plumbers, and then my grandfather was a master mechanic, so they would trade all the time. They would barter. And so their church was where Martin Luther King visited. He was a guest minister there while he was going to this theological college. And this guy was like, hey, George Sr. is my grandfather. Hey, we have a young pastor that is in need of a car. Would you be able to whip something up for him? And my grandfather like, sure, no problem, We can do some plumbing work here at the house sometime. And he got some old car and just basically got it working.
He made a Frankenstein car, like... A car out of parts?
Well, I think it was probably a fairly decent car, but he got it into working order. It was something that he had.
Wow.
And like you guys do the same thing. You got a bunch of cars and you're constantly working on them. So like this is what my grandfather and my father did. And so he came to the house where my father grew up, Martin Luther King Jr., to get the car with Big John.
Wow.
My father met him.
What?
My grandfather taught him how to drive stick shift.
Wow.
And he said they were all in the living room.
You have to be kidding me.
He said he led the family in prayer and thanked him for this gift, and because he just gave it to him.
Wow, that's
so beautiful. Your grandfather built Martin Luther King's first
No. His grandfather taught him how to drive stick shift.
Martin Luther King
Jr.
Jr.
Wow, dude.
That's insane.
Yeah,
we have to get the story out there.
He said a prayer and he told him how to drive, and then at that time, of course, he wasn't anyone famous. He was an 18-year-old kid.
Yeah.
Going to college
Still,
and just needed a car.
That's great, though.
And then later, obviously, like 20 years later, he became what he is.
That's beautiful.
And
that's touching.
Cool
Insane.
That is a great story.
Cool. That story. My grandfather.
That's a great story.
That's insane. That is insane.
All right, guys, don't be shy. In the comments down below, if you're listening on YouTube, let us know. Comment your most. How would I say this? Like heartwarming, like
Jesus.
Yeah, like
story
so
related
cool.
to like.
Gump. What's your best Forrest Gump story?
Yeah, there we go. Like
exactly.
Best Forrest Gump story.
Like who have you run into and somebody.
And also let us know how many. If you can connect with someone famous through. How would you say again? How did you
so many degrees of separation?
Yeah, so many degrees of separation.
So Tom connected himself with 3 degrees to Martin Luther King Jr.
Directly to him. So that means that 2 degrees. Right?
That's 2. It's you, your father, and your grandfather.
Yeah.
Because you don't count. Like it's your father and then your grandfather.
Right. And my father met him, so like. I guess
so it's 2.
It's 2 degrees of separation.
Wow.
That's insane.
So my father shook his hand.
Wow.
I shook my father's hand. So
I shook your hand.
So you're what? 3 degrees separated from Martin Luther King.
That is amazing.
Oh my God! I can tell the story now.
We're part of it.
We're part of it. This is insane. Wow.
Right, guys.
Okay, guys. So this is it for today. Don't forget to comment. Tell us what you think. Connect yourself to someone famous in the comments. Give us a like.
Yep.
Subscribe, please. It would mean a lot to us.
And
listen.
Stay tuned for new stuff. That's true. Stay tuned. Stay tuned for new stuff, and don't drink and drive.
Do not drink and drive.
We're set.
Dude, that was a good one.